Hashpipe sounded nothing like what Weezer had ever done before. Never did we imagine it could be a Weezer song. It's like, I just wrote it, but like, who should we give this to? So I sent it to Ozzy Osbourne.
It is Kevin Kenny. This is a brand new Audacy check-in. We have quite the guest today coming to you live for a brand new edition of the show. You may know this gentleman as the lead singer of Avant Garde. You may also remember him as Johnny Casino from the high school production of Grease, or you may know him as the lead singer of Weezer, celebrating 30 years of the Blue Album. Please welcome Rivers Cuomo.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
And we were just remarking off camera, Rivers, that this somewhat looks like a spaceship. And that was the cunning segue that I came up with to talk about this voyage to the Blue Planet.
Yes. So, yeah, I feel like I'm in a spaceship now, which is very apropos because I'm announcing Weezer's tour of the United States this fall with Dinosaur Jr. and the Flaming Lips. We're calling it Voyage to the Blue Planet. And the thing is, we're going to play a bunch of classics, and then we're going to kind of zoom back through space and then land on this blue planet and play the Blue Album, our first album, from front to back, which turns 30 years old this year on May 10th.
But how did you land on the concept of the Blue Planet and doing it in this sort of way?
Just, trying to think of something fun and interesting for us. I mean, obviously, it's all about the Blue Album and just playing those tunes and having everybody sing along, but we just like big productions and some kind of setting that makes it interesting and unique. Definitely.
I want to take you back in time. We're having this conversation in Los Angeles, and of course, 1992 LA is sort of the backdrop, if you will, of you guys, kind of forming. And obviously, I wasn't around back then, but I imagine that LA must have been a really interesting time for, anybody, but especially a band like you guys, because it's post Nirvana, it's post Pearl Jam. That's obviously now probably in the atmosphere, so to speak, as a music lover here. But then, you think of like a Guns N' Roses, a Use Your Illusion, that had just come out. So there's still some sort of 80s energy out there. And then you guys don't sound like either of those. And here you are shopping, the kitchen tapes around. What was it like in 1992 LA for Weezer?
Yeah, it was awkward. It definitely seemed like there were still a few holdovers from the Sunset Strip glam metal days, but most people were trying to do the grunge thing. And we would be playing on the same bill as like 3 or 4 other grunge bands, and we looked and sounded totally different, like the Blue Album. So it didn't hit as long as we were playing the clubs in LA. We didn't get much of a buzz or a following, and it wasn't until they started playing our first single, The Sweater Song, on the radio. That's when kids heard our music. Up until then, we were playing for 21 and up people in the clubs, and they were still doing the grunge thing. So it wasn't until we got on the radio that we really found our audience.
What do you think it was that spoke to a younger demo than, say, the average grunge band at the time?
I don't know, but I feel like it's still happening because there's still like 10-year-olds who are discovering the Blue Album, like really relating to it. So there's something about 23-year-old me that is very similar to a 10-year-old mentality.
When researching the Blue Album, ahead of our conversation, I was actually, there was a factoid that I didn't know about. And it struck me because I remember I was talking to Adam Duritz of the Counting Crows one time, and he was talking about the big, this like misnomer about when they were blowing up and how everyone thinks this was Mr. Jones, right, being this big hit. And that was a big radio hit. But he goes, everyone forgets we did SNL. And after they did SNL, they just soared up the charts with that August and Everything After record. And I thought about how I think there's almost an equivalent in the Weezer trajectory of something that people forget about, but that was huge and monumental for your guys' success and exposure, was the Buddy Holly video being included on the Windows 95.
Yeah.
Can you tell this story? Because I think this is just wild in today's hindsight.
Yeah. The amazing thing is no one ever asked us permission. We don't know if the label gave it without asking us, or if Windows, I can't imagine Windows just put us on there. But yeah, we were never consulted. We definitely would have said no, because back then bands just didn't do partnerships with corporations like that at all. It was unheard of. But they did it. And of course, we were all upset when we found out about it. But then it went on to be just like this massive promotion for us. And it's totally unexpected because, Windows 95, that's what everyone was using. And everyone was so excited to see a video on their computer pair that with the fact that it was such an amazing video. It's like everyone was watching Buddy Holly.
Oh, it was crazy. And then I don't know if this is overstated or not, but I'd love your story behind it, is that you actually initially were hesitant to include that on the Blue album, and it was really Rick Ocasek pushing you guys and leaving little notes and doodles around the studio that made you want to include it.
Yeah, I love it. It was the last song I wrote for the Blue album. It wasn't on the demo we originally sent Rick. It was just wrote it right before we went in to record the album, and I loved it, but I thought, this is what I want the second album to sound like, so I'm going to save this one for the second album. So yeah, Rick had to keep cajoling me, like, no, we should consider putting this one on the Blue album. So I'm glad we did.
And then just, for like the real Blue album nerds listening, what do you think Rick's greatest contribution to that record was? I know, it's been talked about. He changed the guitar pickup location, brighter sound. You could argue that kind of gave Weezer its sound on the Blue album. Would you say it was that, or what was his greatest contribution to that first record?
Yeah, I mean, so many. You just have to listen to our demo and then listen to the album. It's like, wow. Just the chemistry of being with him, being in New York City, being in this legendary studio, Electric Lady, it just made us step up our game and start thinking like, okay, we're going to be a major rock band and not just some like little indie band in LA. So, just everything got turned up and tightened up, and it became the powerful juggernaut that it is.
You initially offered Hash Pipe to Ozzy Osbourne?
Yeah. Yeah, in retrospect, it's hard to remember, but Hash Pipe sounded nothing like what Weezer had ever done before. Never did we imagine it could be a Weezer song. It's like, I just wrote it, but like, who should we give this to? So I sent it to Ozzy Osbourne, and he passed. So then, if somehow it ended up making the cut for our third record, and it became the first single, and we still play it today.
And kind of like going along the lines of a Blue album, not folklore, but of course Matt Sharp, a huge part of the Blue album, of course. And then I was reading that you and Matt actually got together and made music, I guess, in early '04, and then it just never saw the light of day. I was just curious, like, is that stuff that's recorded that might wind up on whether it's like a deluxe of this or something in the future?
I actually don't know. He would have the tape, so we would have to ask him. I've always wondered that myself, like what happened to those. We did play a show. It was his show, and I came and kind of crashed it and played a bunch of songs with him, and the kids were super excited. It was awesome.
So in addition to the tour, of course, are you guys planning any sort of deluxe edition? I know, of course, I was thinking about you guys because I found out about Weezer in 2004 when you guys re-released the Blue album, the deluxe version. For the 30th, is there any plans to sort of do another deluxe? I mean, that's kind of a tall task of... Yeah.
They just sent me it's like this giant box set with like 4 albums or something in it. So I was just looking at it before I walked in here.
No way.
Yeah, crazy amount of stuff.
Is there, can you tease any of the stuff or?
Yeah, there's like a lot of old show recordings and rehearsal recordings, like very early Weezer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right on. Release date on that or just TBD?
TBD, but I guess before the tour.
Okay, right on. Well, very, very cool. Rivers, we really appreciate you stopping by today.
Thanks for having me.